Hello everyone. Today we are imagine I want to create 100 student objects in Python. Every student has name, age and course. Would I really want to create an empty object then manually assign these values one by one? That would be repetitive and messy. What if Python could automatically initialize the object with all the information at the exact moment we create it? That's exactly where this init method comes in. In this video, we are going to learn init from the absolute basics, understand what self actually means, and build a few practical examples so you can confidently use constructors in your Python programs. Hello everyone, I am Punyakirti. Welcome to my Python for Generative AI learning series. In this video series, I will take you step by step through Python fundamentals and show you how they connect to build powerful generative AI applications. Let's start today's session. First, understand creating our first class. First, let's create a very simple class. I will call this class as student. Take this code. Let's run this. Nothing we are doing, just we are defining the class. Inside that we just added a Python. So I am running this code Python. See, nothing is printed, anything. It is created successfully, compiled successfully. Here I have created a class called student. I'm using pass because at this point I don't want to add anything inside the class. Now let's create an object from this class. How to create that? So let's take student1 is equal to student0. Here only I'm taking this one. So here student1 is the an object created from the student class. So think about this, it this way. The class is the blueprint and student1 is an actual object created from that blueprint. So I have created, right, what this student object contains. Let's see. The student's object contains main student object at this address. By this you need to understand the student object is created in memory and the memory address is stored inside this student1 variable. This is an object. Okay, let's continue. The problem we have is, now suppose I want to this student object to have a name and age. I can manually add them. Okay, how to do? See here, I can add them using like this student dot name and age and print student name and print student age. So when we run this, see, we get the object. So one object I have created and normal variables I added. But if I want to create multiple objects, what happens? Let's understand. The object has two attributes. The name attribute contains Rahul and the age attribute contains 25. Let's verify that. I have run that. So we verified. We got student name as Rahul and student age as 25. So this approach works, but the problem is, imagine I want to create 100 students. I would have to create every object and then manually assign all of its attributes. So that becomes repetitive. Instead, I want to provide the information when I create the object. Something like this: student1 is equal to student and I'm passing Rahul and 25. But our current student class does not support this. So how do we solve this? We can use init method. This is where init comes in picture. Okay, now we understand this part, right? Let's go to the next topic, how to create a init method. So let's modify our class. Inside the class I will create a special method called init. Okay, so we have a pass here, right? So I will remove all this code. Now what we are going to do, definition. So init self name age and self dot name is equal to this one. So what it is to, let's understand this carefully, because this is the most important part of today's video. First we have a definition def. So that's because init is a method. That's why def is common for functions you are defining. That is common in Python. Then we have a special name init with double underscore at the end. Notice that there are two underscore before init and two underscores after it. Then we have self followed by name and age. Okay, this is out created. Okay, now object is created. So now what happens, we use self, right? Let's understand self, then we can go for the code execution. Now let's talk about self, because this is probably the most confusing part for beginners. You can think of self as a current object. Okay, Let's create our first student. Student 1 is equal to student of Rahul 25. So we created. So I have created student 1 is equal to student of Rahul comma 25. I have passed. Okay. So now when Python initializes the object, self refers to the student object. See, when we create here, let's run this one. Print initializing student object. I have printed inside that. So I didn't do anything, just I created the object. When we run this, you are able to see here initializing student object. While initializing the student object, self will be used as current object. So student 1 is the current object here. Self will refer to this student object, student 1 object. Okay. So when I write self dot name, that means student one dot name is equal to name. The name on the right side is the value we received. In our example, that value is Rahul. The self dot name on the left side means the name attribute belonging to the particular object. So effectively, Python stores Rahul inside student one object. So if I ask student one is the object, name is Rahul and age is 25. If I create student 2, so student 2 has contains whatever values it passes. So we can now access those values like this. Okay. So before, what we need to do, we need to create multiple objects. We can access that now like this: student 1 dot name, student 1 dot age. Okay. When we do this, we are getting Rahul and 25. In the same way, student 2 Priya and 22. So we can 2 and age. We can do that one as well. See here, we are getting. So initializing student object. So student 2 is another object. It is initialized and store the values name and age. So name and age of student 2 and student 1 are different. Okay. And we get Rahul and 25. As a result, also we created Priya and 22 using student 2 object as well. So but now condition is, why do we need self dot name? Let's make this distinct very clear. Inside the constructor we have this. Okay, init self name age. Self dot name self age is equal to 20 name and age. Name is a parameter we are passing. We are passing while the creating the object. Then self dot name is an attribute of that object. Okay, so this line self dot name is equal to name means take the value received through the name parameter and store it in the current object's name attribute. The same thing happens with the age as well. Self dot age is equal to age means age is the parameter passing to the object. Take that parameter and store in the attributes of object, current object. That's why we are storing self dot age. Take the value received through the age and store it inside the current object. So creating multiple objects. Now let's see why this becomes really useful. I will create 3 students using the same class. Okay, I will use the student 1, student 2. I will remove this. Let's take 3. So student 1, student 2, student 3. 3 objects I have created. All 3 objects are created from the same class, but each object has his own data. Let's print their name using student 1. So student 1 name is different, student 2 name is different, student 3 name is different. See, initializing 3 objects and printed Rahul, Priya, Amit. We get Rahul, Priya and Amit. This is the important idea. The class defines what information a student should have, but each individual object stores its own values. So adding more attributes. Next topic is adding more attributes. Let's make our student class a little more useful. A student can have a name, age and course. Okay, so we are adding a new attribute. Self.course is equal to course. So new attribute after this self.course, this will be passed as a parameter self name age. Okay, now let's create a student object. 3 objects will be created. See, I added a subject and we can print that values. So here I am passing 3 values. Raw goes into name, 25 goes into age and Python goes into the course. Let's print them. Okay, in our concept mathematics, physics, chemistry I took example. When I create 3 objects, 3 values it will be stored. Initializing Rahul 25 mathematics, Priya second object Priya 23 physics, Amit 27 chemistry. We did. Now our object contains all 3 pieces of information. Now we understood how to add the attribute, right? Next topic is adding a method. Usually a class does not only contain data, it can also contain behavior. For example, let's create a method displays the student information. We have this method already. Let's take this method display self. So what we are going to do, we are defining a method. That method contains display, which contains self, and it will print here. Okay, here we will have our init method for initializing the object. Then we have another method called display. The display method reads the values stored inside the object and prints them. So how to do that? I will take this code. I created an object Rahul 25 Python. I created the object and initialized the object with these values, and we are calling the display method. When we run this, see here, it is initializing the stored object and all the values are stored. Now name, age, course are printed. So when I create the object, init initializes it. So we are able to see here it is initializing the student object. Then when I call display, the method prints the information. This is how it will printed. Next, practical example using employee class. Let's move to more realistic example. Imagine we are developing an employee management system. An employee might have name, department, salary. So define that class. I removed all this. I will remove this old code, and I define a class called employee inside the same file. It contains all the information. Here our constructor accepts three values: employee's name, department, and the salary. Let's create the employee. Employee 1 created. So now employee 1 contains all this information. Let's print them using employee1 dot name, employee dot object, and department. So when we run this, it is initialized and Raul is the employee name, department is engineering, salary is 80,000. This is exactly how classes are useful in real application. Instead of keeping unrelated variables everywhere, we group related information inside an object. So next topic is calculating values inside init method. Now here is something important. The init method does not only have to store values. We can also calculate something while initializing the objects. Now let's employees object we can modify. We can add a init method with the monthly salary and all information. We are just modifying. So once what we did here, init self name monthly salary. Here what we did, here we receive the employee's monthly salary. We store that value in monthly salary. Then we calculate the annual salary by multiplying the monthly salary by 12. The result is stored in self dot annual salary. Let's test it. Okay, so we take the object. So we created with initial object employee Rahul and 80,000. 80,000 is the monthly salary we have passed, and we got the initialization. Then we calculated monthly salary into 12 as an annual salary. So when we run this, we get Rahul 80,000 and 9,60,000 is the annual salary. So the monthly salary is 80,000. So the annual salary becomes 9,60,000. This is good example of how init can prepare the initial state of an object. Then next topic is default values. Sometimes we want to provide a default value. For example, suppose most employees belong to IT department. We can define IT as the default department. So same class employee example I will take for default example. So in init method department, if you pass department is equal to IT, we have defined here. So now I can create an employee without providing department. If you don't provide the information, just you're passing employee as a Rahul, then because I didn't provide department, Python uses the default value which is IT. Let's print and see. I didn't pass the employee, only name is passed as an employee name, but department I didn't specify. When I run, IT is 2. Okay, if I pass HR as a department, so that becomes HR. If you pass the value, that will be overridden. If you don't pass the value, then it will be take the default value as IT. Let's create another example, employee and provided department. This time the provided value finance is used instead of default value. We tried with HR. Next topic is validation. Another useful thing we can do inside init is validate the input. For example, let's say our student class should not allow a negative age. Okay, so before so we can use a student class here. We can remove this. So inside this input we took the name and age. So if age is less than 0, we raise an error, value error, age cannot be negative. Self.name is equal to name, self.age is equal to age. Okay, before storing the values, we check the age. If the age is less than 0, we raise an error. Let's test this. Let's let's test it with the example. We are passing student object and with the value Rahul and age as negative value -5. If I do that one, see, it is throwing age cannot be negative. It is our custom error we throw using this one. Like this will fail because our validation detects an invalid age. So now let's try with a valid. So let's try with valid value. So I will remove this. Valid value is positive value 25, name and all. Now without any error, it will print Rahul and age. If negative value is passed, that will be throw an error. This works because the age passes our validation. Okay, let's understand common mistake forgetting self. Let's look at the common beginner mistake. Suppose I write this code like this. Okay, so this is my code. Inside this we have init method and I didn't pass the self method. What happens? Self variable. This is incorrect because I haven't included self in the method parameters. The correct version is add the self. Here we need to add self. Then it will be perfect. Okay. Now the name is stored inside the object self.name. Forgetting self. Self represent the current object, so we need it here. Okay, so we added this one and it is working fine. Now common mistakes forgetting self. Here's another very common mistake. So while initializing we pass the variable, but what happens? Init self is equal to name is equal to name. What happens? This does not create an attribute for the object. The correct version is definition init self name we have to pass and self dot name is equal to name. The name, now the name is stored inside the object, otherwise it will not store. So common mistake incorrect init method spelling. One final mistake is spelling the method incorrectly. So you are able to see here init should be two attributes. If you don't, two underscores before and after. If you do this, what happens? This is not the special initialization method. We need two underscore on both sides. Those underscore are part of the special method name init. So then only it will be special init method. So real world product example. Let's finish with one practical example. Imagine we are building an inventory application. Each product has a name, price and quantity. We can represent that using a class. Class product. Okay, we have defined it. So we can understand each code. So inside this code, what happens? Class product definition init method which has name, price, quantity and display this information. So let's understand what we are doing. First, name, price and quantity are received when the object is created. We store those values as attributes. Then we calculate the total value. For example, if the price is 75,000 and quantity is 10 and the total inventory value is 75,000, let's create the object. First we create the object. Let's create the object. Product is equal to, so outside the object we have outside the class we are creating, then call product dot display. When we do this, let's see, we received values and product is laptop, price is 75,000, quantity is 10, total value is 7,50,000 and we get product information along with the calculated total value. The most important concept is, before we finish, I want you to remember four things. A class is a blueprint. An object is an actual instance created from the blueprint. Init is used to initialize the object and the self refers to the current object. For example, class student, so definition init self name age, so self.name, self.age and age. So when I write student is equal to student Rahul 25, Python creates the object and initializes its data. The result is essentially an object containing Rahul as the name and 25 as the age. So final recap. So let's quickly recap today's lesson. We started with a simple class and saw problem of manually assigning values to objects. Then we introduced the init method. We learned it using initialize and object attribute. We understood that self represents the current object We saw how multiple objects can have different data even though they come from the same class. We also learned that init can provide default values, calculate additional values, and validate input. And finally, we looked at a practical product example. If you remember just one thing from the video, remember this. Init prepares an object with its initial data when the object is created. Let's close this. If you are learning Python for first time, make sure practice this concept instead of just memorizing the definition. Create your own classes. Try a student class, try employee, then product. Once you become comfortable with self, attributes, objects, and init, Python's object oriented programming concepts will become much easier. If you found this video useful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and share it with someone who is learning Python. I will see you in the next video. Thank you.